In the second part of Chapter 5, now we'll talk about the importance of open-mindedness. So communication happens between individuals and not cultures. In other words, individuals are the ones that make the decision of how they act, how they respond to somebody, how they talk to another. So understanding other cultures is an individual thing. It's not to say that because I'm part of one culture, I cannot be accepting of another. Because I have one mindset doesn't mean that I can't understand other people. That is an individual choice. Everybody is different. Everybody's different in how they respond, how they believe, and how they think. And so it's not right to stereotype an entire culture based on one group or even an individual person within that group. However, we see it all the time in today's culture. So many times people say, well, you are part of this group, therefore you have to believe this way. That's not necessarily the case. And so what we have to do is understand as marketers is that the more open-minded we are, the more likely we are to understand our consumers and therefore be able to market to them in an effective way, and for their own sake give them products that might meet their needs and desires. And more for a corporate goal would be to increase our sales, provide products that are meaningful to society. And so the whole key to this understanding here is that we should not stereotype entire cultures based on one group or a person, because everybody is slightly different, even if they're in the same culture. So define open-mindedness. It's in your book. It says you are open to understanding the ideas of others and are willing to recognize their differing viewpoints. And so the questions that you have to ask yourself is where in that definition does it say you have to agree with their viewpoint? And the answer is obviously it doesn't. What it does say is that you need to recognize their viewpoint. How this affects us as marketers. If a consumer feels, and this is what our research shows us, if a consumer feels like they have a voice, in other words, if they feel like in a decision-making process, their voice was heard, they're more likely to be happy with the outcome of that choice, even if it is not identical to what their expectations are. In other words, if I feel like I had a say in the final product that was created for me, while it may not be ideal and it may not be exactly what I want, hopefully it is, but if it is not, if I feel like I had a voice in how that was developed, I'm going to be more likely to accept the flaws in that product, or maybe the shortcomings or not, the unmet expectations may not be as big for me because I felt like I had a voice, as opposed to if I asked for something and my voice wasn't heard. If I feel like my viewpoint had no importance placed upon it in a purchase decision, I'm less likely to be satisfied with the outcome of that purchase. And so again, where in the definition of open-mindedness does it say that you have to agree with their viewpoint? The answer is that it doesn't. It says that you have to recognize it and show them that you recognize their viewpoint, even if it's impossible to fulfill that mentality. And that may be something completely different depending on the product that you're marketing. But what our research shows us is that consumers have a voice, they're more likely to want to purchase that product. I'll give you an example of what I mean by all this. There's a study that was done looking at student fees related to college athletic programs. Many colleges and universities charge a student fee for athletics. That is, they charge them a flat fee for every student that comes every semester, and that gives them entry into sporting events, typically all of them. And so when the research showed us was that when a university makes a decision to raise a fee, if they're more likely to include somebody such as the SGA president or SGA or a group of students and show the students that they were involved in that process of setting the price, they'll be more likely to accept that raise fee because they felt like people who are like themselves had a voice in that process. So many times you've probably seen that at SFA campus. You've seen essentially voting on increases in fees. Students vote whether or not they felt like they had a voice. May have been the reason it did not pass, or whatever it may be. The point is, we've seen through research that students that have a voice in the fees that they're paying are more likely to be accepting of those fees and the value of the things they get from those fees. And so again, it goes back to this idea of voice. When a consumer feels like they have a voice, that their voice was heard, they'll be more likely to purchase that product or be okay with the purchase of that product. So again, just because you say you're open-minded doesn't mean you have to agree with what those people are saying. It does say that you need to recognize their differing viewpoints and show them that they were heard. And so these are rhetorical questions. I'll answer that here in a second. But what is the value of allowing other viewpoints into discussion? And what are you risking when you accept, what risks do you accept by doing this? And the answer is that open-mindedness allows a free flow of new ideas, which can create utility for consumers. It gives you the ability to create utility, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. You might be risking misunderstanding of cultures. You might be risking essentially your core values as a culture. But as long as you are understanding that you don't have to accept other people's viewpoints, but more recognize them and try to take into account when making decisions is the most important part. And so again, if open-mindedness allows free flow of ideas that creates utility for sports consumers, what is utility? Well, utility is defined as the once satisfying power of a good or a service. In other words, a marketer creates utility through this exchange process. I buy a product, and the reason I buy that product is met by one of these four types of utility. Form utility, which is the physical characteristics of a product that is a good or a service. So I buy a bottle of water because of the taste of the water. I buy a pair of shoes because of how they're created and how they fit me because I'm a trail runner versus a road runner. Time utility, so essentially offering a good or a service, a product at a specific time. I need an umbrella when it rains, right? I need a championship t-shirt immediately after the championship because there is a time element to it. Place utility is created where a product is consumed. I need an umbrella because I'm about to go outside, and so I stop by the store in order to buy that umbrella. That's both time and place. It is easy for me to buy concessions because it is easily accessible in the facility. And ownership utility is essentially giving consumers a sense of possession. So I have an ownership in that product. So regardless of whatever product you buy, some sort of utility is being created in your mind as a consumer. If it isn't, then you're not going to rebuy that product or buy it to begin with. Form utility is the physical characteristics. I buy it because of the physical characteristics of that product. I buy it again because it fulfilled that need of the physical product, whether it be a hat, a t-shirt, a good, or it could even be a service. Timeliness, speediness of service, that kind of thing. The time utility, which would be offering at a specific time, relates to convenience. Place utility is also based on convenience, but more of a geographic location rather than in time and convenience. And then ownership utility, again, is giving consumers a sense of possession. Every product creates one of or more of these things. And so the product, next thing I want you to do is to answer these questions. Think of a good that you produced, that you bought recently, specifically a sporting good. It can be a service as well. Why did you purchase it? And what type of utility or types of utility does it create for you? Again, I want you to do this and think about utility it's creating. Then also think as it relates to our discussion of open-mindedness, how this allows marketers to work together to brainstorm and create utility for consumers that may be from different cultural backgrounds. So again, answer these questions in the Dropbox assignment.